Hello, this is Chris M, and we're going to be looking at solving absolute value equations and inequalities. The big thing to remember with these is that when you have an absolute value, that can mean plus or minus the value of what's inside the absolute values. So let's look at a couple examples. The first one will be an equation, and the second one will be an inequality. The first one, we have the absolute value of 7x minus 9 is equal to the absolute value of 6x plus 10. And we're looking at solving for x. So let's go ahead and rewrite this without the absolute values. We can say that plus or minus 7x minus 9 is equal to plus or minus 6x plus 10. But here's the good news. We don't have to solve for equations because the plus or minuses will cancel each other out. So really, we're just going to be looking at solving two equations. So what I could do is I could just get rid of this plus or minus, because again, if I multiply by a minus or a plus, I'm going to have those canceling out. So I have two equations now, so let's look at those both. The first one's going to be plus 7x minus 9 is equal to 6x plus 10. And the second one is going to be minus the quantity 7x minus 9 is equal to 6x plus 10. So we just have two linear equations we're solving for here. So I can get the x's together. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to subtract the 6x over. And I have x minus 9 is equal to 10. And then I can add over 9. And I get x is equal to 19. So that would be one possibility. The other equation, I can distribute that minus through. I'll get minus 7x minus 10 to minus the plus 9 is equal to 6x plus 10. I can add the 7x over if I want to keep them positive. It really doesn't matter which side I put the variables on as long as they're on the same side. So I have 9 is equal to 13, x plus 10, subtract over 10. So I have 13x is equal to negative 1. And then dividing by 13, that gives me a fraction. X is equal to negative 1 over 13. That's just dividing by 13. Now, it's really important with absolute value equations that you check these. I did pre-check these. When I plug in 19, actually, both sides would equal to 124. And when I plug in negative 113, they're both a little over 9. They're between 9 and 10, but they both work. But it's important that you check those out. So that's how you can handle an equation. Now, with an inequality, it's a little bit different. What we want to look at here is that when we have an absolute value, this also means distance. So what this really means here, when I'm trying to solve for y plus 3, that absolute value is less than 7. Really, that means the distance between some number y and 3 is 7. So you can actually sort of look at that on the number line if you'd like. So 3 is sort of our center point, and our y is this distance plus or minus, and that distance is 7. So actually, my bad here, we have to have 7 here, so let me undo that. So the distance between y and 3 is less than 7. So it's going to be all these values in between here. That's going to be y. We're not going to include those endpoints. So in the context of our software that we're using, we have these open parentheses. Remember, they're closed brackets when we conclude it, but they're open parentheses here. Now, how do we find that? How do we find the answer to this? Well, I always think about it this way. When I have absolute value inequality like this, so y plus 3 is less than 7, what that means to me is that we have two inequalities. We have y plus 3, the positive y plus 3 is less than 7. And so we're looking at the intersection of those. We're looking at what's in common there. Negative y plus 3, just in case what's in that absolute value is negative, that is going to be less than 7 as well. So I want to solve for where they intersect. So now we go ahead and solve these. So I add 3 to both sides of this equation. I get y is less than, subtracting 3, I get 4. And over here, I'm going to divide by that negative 1 first. You can distribute it through or you can divide by it. So it's just like negative 1 times this. I'm going to go ahead and divide by negative 1. And remember, when I multiply or divide by a negative number, that switches my sign. So I have y plus 3 is greater than, now it switches my sign, negative 7. And if I subtract 3, I get y is greater than negative 10. So these are the two sort of inequalities that I have. If I look at just the first one, I have 4. Here's my 4, and I know that y is less than 4. So I would have an open bracket there at 4, less than goes this way. So that would be my first one. If you'd like to write it in interval notation, by the way, it's going to be negative infinity. We never include infinity because we can't get there to 4. That's going to be my interval notation, and they're both parentheses because we don't include that. And here, y is greater than negative 10. So if I look at this one over here, I have negative 10 over here, and y is greater than that. So in my notation on the number line, it looks like this. But if I want to write it in interval notation, I would write negative 10 to infinity. So that would be for my second inequality. We want an and, so we want to know really where those intersect, the intersection of those two. So if I put these all on a number line, put these both on a number line, I'd have the first one, here's my 4, and let's use some color to illustrate this. I'd have this going all the way this way. And then for my second one, if I just look at that one, I'd have my negative 10 over here. And I'd be going all the way this way. So there's two things we could have. We could have an and or we could have an or. And for this one, we have an and, so that means what they have in common. Notice if we had an or, it would be everything because my red and my green encompasses the whole number line. But here, since we have an and, we only want to take the place where they both are shaded. So we can see, and I'll put this in black, that the place that both are shaded are right in here from negative 10 to 4. So that's my answer there on the number line. Or if I want to do this in interval notation, my answer for the whole thing would be negative 10 to 4. And I don't include those endpoints because there's no equal sign there. And notice if you look up at this picture here that we drew in the beginning, that does make some sense because we have the distance between y and 3 is 7.